There are quite a few copies of this deck at the top tables.
Yeah, he's playing against Joe Lively. Joe Lively playing the Legacy standby of Burn. It is 17 Mountains, 2 Barbarian Rings, and a bunch of Burn that goes to the face. A couple standard cards made the cut here. 2 Young Pyromancer, 1 Satyr Fire Dancer, and next to that, all the greatest hits you'd expect in a Burn deck.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm pretty excited to see some of these tweaks and experiments in Burn. I have not seen Young Pyromancer at play in a Legacy Burn deck before.
All right, and we are underway. Lively wins the die roll, goes first, and has the best one-drop in the deck. That is Goblin Guide. It swings, draws Solis a Wasteland, but puts Solis down to 18 and now 17.
Yeah, a lot of people like to look at the text on Goblin Guide as a drawback. I think of it as more of a perk. Yeah, he didn't give Eddie Solis a Wasteland. He did, technically, but we'll forgive this here.
Sure.
He now knows there's a Wasteland. Goblin Guide is just a 2/2 with haste that gives you some information.
I mean, as far as I can tell out of the Burn deck, you don't really care about giving your opponent extra lands.
Yeah, particularly Wastelands in this deck. He does have 2 Barbarian Ring, so other than that, just 17 Mountains. So Wasteland, not really something we're worried about here.
All right, well, Solis is going to match the one-drop of Goblin Guide with his own one-drop. That's Delver of Secrets, but not yet big enough to block and trade with Goblin Guide. And Lively's actually going to continue the creature beats. This is Hellspark Elemental joining the fray with Goblin Guide.
Nice.
So this is something we see. Sometimes we see Hellspark Elemental here. Sometimes we see Keldon Marauders. Sometimes we see Vexing Devil. All these are like creatures that are only half creatures because they're really just burn spells with the type line creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the tricky thing about Legacy Burn is you gain a lot of advantage by not giving your opponent things to kill with Swords to Plowshares and Lightning Bolt. Now, you give that advantage back up when you fill your deck with these half burn, half creature type effects. Hellspark Elemental kind of mitigates that because it has 2 sides.
Yeah.
You can Lightning Bolt it once, but it's going to come back.
Sure. I mean, Goblin Guide is the main, that's too good of a creature to not play.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes you can see any of those other creatures I was mentioning. Usually not all of them. There's a lot of great burn as well.
So we did that Insectile Aberration is now up and ready and flying.
Yeah, there was the Upkeep Brainstorm to flip it off of Daze. Solis looking like he's trying to race the burn deck here. He had the option to Brainstorm flip the Delver or make a turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic. He chose to flip the Delver there.
Sure, and the Blue-White-Red Delver, it's kind of a burn deck in its own right. It can race. Now, in this particular matchup, it's probably not favored in a race, although given Eddie's hand, he may feel like he's favored here.
All right.
He does have, we saw Bolt and Swords to Plowshares for that Goblin Guide.
Yeah, so thanks to Goblin Guide, Solis had one too many cards in his hand there. He discarded a Wasteland, so that's not really a weapon against burn.
Yeah, see? Gave a free Wasteland, gave up a free Wasteland.
Didn't draw no drawback at all.
No drawback at all on Goblin Guide.
All right, well, on his turn, Lively's going to go ahead and unearth this Hellspark Elemental, and it's going to join the fray along with Goblin Guide. I do like that play, so that's kind of a Daze-proof play here now that he knows about the Daze. Solis can remove one of these 2 creatures, but not both. He's going to bolt away the Goblin Guide after drawing a fetch land, and takes 3 off the Hellspark. That puts him down to 9.
9 is a precarious spot against a deck full of spells that say take 3.
Now, there was no more lands from Lively there.
Which means his hand is full of spells, which
right.
is bad news, actually. Normally, yeah, for Eddie. Normally, you see someone miss their 3rd land drop, you're like, all right, we got an edge here.
However, yeah.
In this case, yeah, Eddie knows that if Joey resolves 3 spells, he's probably dead. And Joey is holding, what, 5 spells? 4 or 5 at least?
Yeah, he's gonna have to race Lively, and we know he has a Daze, so he's gonna be able to do that. He'll probably be able to get a counter with the Daze.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah. When Joey misses a land drop, that Daze becomes much better. Yeah. And we can see Spell Pierce as well. So actually pretty well insulated against the burn spells here. So he basically is going to trade turn for turn, ideally. All
right, well, the 3rd land comes from Solis. That's going to fetch up a Tundra, putting him down to 8, but it casts Stoneforge Mystic, getting Batterskull, and that seems to be really the weapon that Blue-White-Red Delver wants in this matchup.
Yeah, there's maybe an argument actually for getting Umezawa's Jitte just to gain life a turn quicker. This way, he passes the turn once, and then he takes 1 turn to put Batterskull into play, and then it's a full 2 turn cycles before he gets to attack and gain life. Whereas if he got the Jitte, he could actually, assuming he made his land drop, put it in, equip it, and gain life that turn.
Yeah.
But he does a Daze to protect that, but he would prefer to leave up Spell Pierce as well.
Between Spell Pierce and Daze, it's going to be hard for Joey Lively to resolve any spells here, but that's what he's going to have to do. He has the opponent down to 8, but still only 2 mountains. Looks like he's just going to start throwing burn and seeing if he can get any of it to stick. He's going to start with Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. But these burn decks, they play a lot of spells that cost 1. So there's actually I mean, Joey has a pretty good chance of just casting 2 spells each turn, which can punch through that Spell Pierce and Daze pretty quickly.
That bolt was pointed actually at Stoneforge Mystic. And Joey Lively actually gets to play around the Daze here. He uses his 2nd red mana to suspend a Rift Bolt.
So that's going to be cast on Joey's upkeep when he'll have 2 lands untapped. So he'll actually be able to resolve it through a Spell Pierce even, if that's how Eddie wants to play it.
But at that point, it's too late. He can't keep the Batterskull off the board anymore, right?
No.
So that's probably going to have to go upstairs, and he's going to have to deal the full 8 next turn.
Yes. Which actually, it surprises me that he tried to bolt the Stoneforge in the first place. I think you have to race it at that point.
Well, if you can get the Stoneforge off the board, that buys you some extra turns, right?
It buys you, it looks like 3 extra turns. Two max. I mean, you have this Insectile Aberration bashing you every turn as well. You know, Joey doesn't have a ton of time regardless.
Right. I mean, Insectile Aberration is a 3-power creature. So upkeep, he's going to go ahead and Rift Bolt.
Is he aiming for the Stoneforge? I guess I would assume he is. That would be the only reason that Eddie would respond by gating it in.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and put the Batterskull into play. I think the bolt was going at Stoneforge. Yeah, now Batterskull and the Germ Token are in play. That's going to be pretty bad for Joey Lively. To be fair, I don't think things were looking very good for him because Solis also, in addition to having Spell Pierce, does have a Swords to Plowshares, which he could play on one of his own creatures to gain life in a pinch.
Sure. So Joey, at this point, yeah, if the Germ Token starts connecting, that's pretty much game over.
And you can see it on his face. He's going to go for Price of Progress. That was going for the kill. I don't think he expected it to work from the look on his face, and it did not.
He knew about that Daze, in fact. So, yeah, I think he was just trying to draw it out. So now that Eddie gets to gain 4, he has to deal 12 instead of 8, which is a pretty tall order. He could do it in 1 turn in theory with another Price of Progress and a Fire Blast, or with land into like bolt, Fire Blast or something like that. But
the way that, and Solis can even play around that by holding up Wasteland and wasting his own land if a Price of Progress hits.
Yeah, so Joey is in the spot now where not only does he need a very specific set of cards, but he also needs Eddie to play in a certain way. And I don't think that Eddie is going to give him those outs.
Yeah, the Batterskull connected. That's usually the death sentence for burn. Joey draws again, still at 4 life. Never found the 3rd land, and that should be game 1 in the favor of Solis.
Yeah, does not look happy about all those spells.
If you're going to play, you know what, I got to say something. If you were going to play burn, I like that he's just wearing red while playing the deck.
He's wearing the danger shirt.
Yeah, wearing red in a red deck box with red sleeves.
Yeah,
it's
of course.
Guess what? I'm playing red.
Yeah, we're not trying to level anybody. Yeah, actually, this morning in the finals of the Standard Open, Jason, I'm blanking on his last name. It was like Blackmore, I want to say. He was playing green-white, and he pointed this out to me. He was just like, hey, you should probably get this in the coverage. I wore my green and white shirt specifically for this.
Specifically to be playing green-white?
And I was like, okay, cool. And then I looked at his opponent, who was playing mono-black, and he was just wearing a black T-shirt. I was like, oh, so did you too? He's like, nope.
All right, so I got a question.
Yeah.
How do you feel if you're playing, say you're playing like elf combo, right? And you have some sleeves which have a green mana symbol on the back of them or an elf on the back of them, yes or no?
As in, would I do that?
Yeah,
or?
Would you sleeve up your would you sleeve up your burn deck in red mana symbol sleeves, or would you intentionally not do that?
I mean, I've actually been in this spot several times because I used to borrow decks pretty regularly.
Right.
And the guy that I borrowed decks from, he had a lot of decks, and that's how he kept them organized. He was like, oh, well, you want to borrow the elf deck? Yeah, well.
This one has elf sleeves on it.
Well, I have these 20 deck boxes. Here's how I know this one is elves. So he picks up the green one with the green sleeves. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I actually was forced into that position several times.
Given the choice, though, do you put, like, blue mana symbol sleeves on your burn deck, or do you put red mana symbol sleeves on it?
It's not something I really think about, I guess, but probably blue. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of just of broadcasting what you're trying to do. But at the same time, I don't put any stock. If I sit down and my opponent's shuffling up the green sleeves, I'm not like, all right, it's time to play some elves. I don't necessarily think about that one way or the other.
So I played the SCG Open last week in Milwaukee, and normally I don't put too much stock in this, but I'm gonna tell you, I was playing the Standard Open, sat down against my opponent who shuffles up, and we're just shuffling. We haven't said anything, and he just very calm looks at me. He's like, "You look like you're an Esper player." Has no idea, never met me before. And I'm just like,
to be fair, you totally do.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I just wanted to say it. I wanted to say it because I knew it would upset you.
Nah, I mean, no. It doesn't upset me. I'm like, okay, if it's out there and that's true, it's like, all right. I mean, I guess I do. I mean, I was playing Esper. He's got me. But I have, What's the towel I'm giving off here? Is it like
it's the hat, Matthias. No Monsters player would wear that hat.
I played Monsters at the PT wearing a hat.
Okay, fine. You're all right. Well, that was my attempt to rationalize it, but I guess that's not going to work.
No, he just straight cold called my deck. It was awesome.
Nice.
I tried to do it back to him and like failed.
Maybe he was just trying to. He just picked a deck at random and just said it just to see what your reaction was, and you obviously gave it away.
So yeah. I mean, I thought about that, but I know he's just genuinely was like, I look like an Esper player.
You kind of do. Again.
All right. Sure.
You're going to have to accept that about yourself. Yeah. So these players shuffling up for game 2, and it actually looks like they are finished sideboarding. Eddie is going to not bring in much. It actually doesn't look like he doesn't have any kind of like dedicated hate card. It doesn't even look like he has anything that would be like life gain in any sense. I can see him bringing in Meddling Mage. This is kind of a it's weird.
He could get a burn spell if he's lucky.
Well, there's a weird interaction. He can get not Chain Lightning. What is the Rift Bolt? Like if there's a turn 1
if he spends Rift Bolt, I'm Meddling Mage this Rift Bolt.
Yeah, and it just puts on pressure. You're like this is not a spot where like Eddie does have to like finish a game. Like every draw step he gives Joey, that's maybe another 3 points he takes.
How do you feel about card? I'm going to throw a couple cards on the sideboard. Grim Lavamancer. It can possibly kill a Hellspark or kill a Goblin Guide or at least eat a burn spell. It costs 1.
Yeah, I like Grim Lavamancer more than I dislike Grim Lavamancer. I think that Eddie wants to get those Force of Wills out of his deck. And other than that, he actually, I think, is happy with everything that is currently in his main deck. So he's basically just looking to improve those 4 spells. So I would guess maybe 2 Grim Lavamancer. He has a Sword of Fire and Ice in his board, so he may bring that in.
That's still worse than the other 2 pieces of equipment,
it really
though, right?
is. But it's fine to draw, but yeah, it is worse. So maybe he doesn't do that. Maybe he just goes 2 Grim Lavamancer and 2 Meddling Mage, maybe.
You know, I'm thinking at least, like, would you rather, on the Blue Light Delver side, be casting a True Name Nemesis or a Meddling Mage?
Well... Yeah, that's close, actually. I mean, obviously, True Name Nemesis is a clock. But
well, we are underway. Game 2, Joey Lively, again on the play, has Goblin Guide. This time it doesn't draw Solis a land. It reveals a Force of Will. So Solis has kept them in, and now it drops to 18.
Again, information.
Information,
no drawback.
Now, I'm trying to think if there's any card you'd have to have Force of Will for when you look at it, you know.
He may be worried about something like Sulfuric Vortex.
There are 2 of those in Lively's deck. They're in the main.
And then he saw Price of Progress. That's a pretty scary one. So I could see, just being worried about getting domed for 10 out of nowhere or something like that.
All right, second mountain for Lively. Once again, he's going to have the creature into creature plan. This is Goblin Guide into Hellspark. See if Solis can interact. It looks like he does have a Daze.
Daze on Hellspark Elemental, not the best days.
Yeah, this Daze hurts to cast a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would be really surprised to see him use this Daze here.
He can Swords the Hellspark Elemental here. Looks like he has one of those.
That actually is a pretty good use of his Swords. Although he's Swords and Goblin Guide is also pretty good. So
yeah, actually, I think I should stand corrected. I believe it's a Stoneforge Mystic, not a Swords. Like, that was me like, I really would have Swords there. That seems really good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, if he had Swords, well, he has it now, but a turn late, and he actually did kind of. Time walk himself to Daze that.
Yeah, we have to actually pause here. Solis revealed the Swords and drew it, and then he drew for the turn, so he's drawn an extra card here.
Did it touch his hand? That is the question. That normally dictates how this is ruled.
It's looking at extra cards. I don't think that card he drew this turn, I'm not sure if it touched his hand. I don't think it became indistinguishable from the other cards at any point. So I think this is just looking at extra cards as opposed to drawing extra cards. Those are 2 very different penalties.
Yeah, if it is just looking at extra cards, that would just be a warning.
If you ever take the card and put it in your hand, even if you don't mix up the cards in your hand, that's drawing extra cards because technically, once a card touches the other cards in your hand, it's by the rules, it's indistinguishable from the other cards.
Yeah, and clearly a little frustrated there, shaking off the jitters. I suppose.
This happens.
It does.
This isn't a player trying to game the system. This is something that happens. I mean, this is why you have rules like accumulated warnings. Like if a player did this 3 times in an event, then he gets a game lost. Because like I'm not sure you're doing this on accident. But if you have no more warnings, we'll have the judge resolution. We're actually going to bring you back in the booth here while the judge sorts this out with our players. Once again, Matthias, I'm joined by Andrew Shrout. We are watching round 7 of the Legacy Open. This is a match for top 8 between Joey Lively playing Burn and former JSS champion Eddie Solis.
Yep. Eddie Solis, again, won $20,000 in scholarships all the way back in 2002.
That's like second place at a Pro Tour.
Yes, that is an obscene amount of money.
All right.
And it looks like he just got the warning.
So recapping the board, I think.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it was. They decided that since they did know the card, that they could just downgrade.
He drew a card when he shouldn't, but we knew what the card was.
Yes.
So the penalty was downgraded. Solis for his turn replayed the Tundra that he used to cast Daze, and it looked like has passed the turn back to Lively, who has since drawn for the turn. So we're on Lively's turn 3 here.
Yeah, Eddie only has the one land in play. He made his land drop and then had to take it right back. As I was saying, that Daze, there was a hefty cost to that Daze. So that Stoneforge now is coming down a turn behind schedule.
Yeah, we see Chain Lightning cast from Lively. We're into Lava Spike mode here. That is going to get Spell Pierced by Solis.
Yeah, and I think Eddie is happy to trade a card for a card at this point.
And Surgical Extraction came in out of the board from Joey Lively.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I've said this before in Legacy. I think these kind of cards are cards that I personally think get boarded in like way more often than they're supposed to be.
I agree. If you are removing a card from a graveyard and then subsequently from a library, that should win the game. For this card to be worth it. It should be a card that once that card is gone, the opponent just does not have a plan.
If they're, it's like Sphinx's Revelation. That's a good card to get. If they're playing like Allurin and you take their Allurin.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Now we're talking. If you're taking like the Dazes from a Delver player, not worth it. I mean, yeah. That's
not where you want to be. It's possible that he might have brought it in for some other concern, and this is just the shot he takes. Like he has this card, and I don't know why he would be bringing it in. Maybe he's worried about Snapcaster Mage or something like that. Which we know is not in Eddie's deck, but maybe he doesn't know that. Although in that case, he would probably hold it. So
it could have been a Lava Spike. That's the thing. You gave your opponent 3 life by drawing the Surgical Extraction.
Yeah, in a deck like Burn, it's particularly problematic to board in cards like this because when you're playing a Burn deck, all you're really trying to do is resolve 7 spells. Every card in your deck deals some amount of damage. If you resolve enough of them, you win the game.
But Surgical Extraction doesn't count toward that total.
Yes. Like every card you draw that doesn't deal damage is like a mulligan, unless it serves some other purpose that is more important than that is so important that you can afford to give yourself mulligans. Like you board in something like Ensnaring Bridge, and it just wins you the game as soon as you cast it.
Exactly.
That's worth
fine.
not dealing damage. Yeah. But yeah, Surgical Extraction on it looked like it was Spell Pierce. I don't see the value in that.
I mean,
that's probably
if
not
you'd
worth
gotten a Spell Pierce from Solis's hand, then it was okay, but...
Now, what I do see the value in is Goblin
Guide
number 2. I love me a Goblin Guide. Get in there, boys.
And that is particularly difficult for Solis.
Yeah, Solis is probably going to use this Force of Will.
If you look at it, because he can't answer it this turn without Force of Will, and it's not like next turn's going to be much better. He's going to have to... He wants to cast Stoneforge next turn, but he doesn't really want to cast it if that means taking 4 Goblin Guide hits.
Yeah, if that Goblin Guide resolves, he just knows that he is down 8 life before he can do anything.
So he Force of Wills it. That puts him down to 15 off the Force of Will, 13 off the Goblin Guide attack. But he's kept the board relatively clean. Once again, no 3rd land for Joey Lively.
Yeah, finally gets that 2nd land into play, does Eddie. And he's choosing now between Stoneforge Mystic, which maybe
Swords. It looks like it's just Stoneforge. He could have gone Swords Ponder.
Yeah.
But he's going to go Stoneforge getting Batterskull here, dropping to 12 on the fetch land.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I like that. Goblin Guide, as we said before, every spell in Joey's deck deals X damage. Now, if you can make it so that some of the spells only deal 2 or only deal 3, then Joey has to resolve more spells. But every attack that Goblin Guide gets in, that's like another spell that Joey doesn't have to resolve.
Exactly.
So just setting it up this way, that's basically that's making this Goblin Guide, which is already dealt, I believe, 6. That's guaranteeing it's going to deal 8. And you still have to find a land and deal with it next turn, assuming you're going to spend 2 mana to activate that Stoneforge.
Land number 3 from Lively. He's got 2 cards remaining. The first one's going to be Lightning Bolt. He's going to take out the Stoneforge Mystic. Seems like he does need to do that here.
Yeah. If you have a chance to stop Eddie from activating Stoneforge, you have to take it for sure.
All right, Unearth on Hellspark Elemental. So now 5 more damage puts Solis down to 7. The card revealed was Lightning Bolt. So this Goblin Guide is not long for the game anymore.
Not long, but it's definitely done its job. Again, 8 damage. And
sure.
Has it revealed a land yet this game?
No.
I didn't think so. Goblin Guide. That card. That card.
All right, so he's got Swords and Lightning Bolt. And he's going to start with a Ponder. He does have a Batterskull and True Name Nemesis. These are the last cards in Solis' hand. He's a little short on mana right now. Sees the top of his deck. There are 2 lands. They're both wastelands. But if he wants them, then he's going to get another True Name.
Yeah, I think he definitely needs to find that land. He's got to get a clock in at some point. He's not going to be able to cast True Name Nemesis this turn, but that's totally fine because he absolutely has to get that Goblin Guide off the board.
Yeah, he leaves up the red mana to bolt the Goblin Guide, presumably because the swords can be used 1 on his own creatures to gain life, and 2, he's better at taking out a Hellspark Elemental if he needs to.
So Goblin Guide would put Eddie at a virtual 5.
Yeah, first he's going to see if he gets the free card, and this is a little bit of a misstep by Solis. The cards he put
he could have put the other way.
He could have put them the other way, and he would have gotten a free wasteland off that Goblin Guide.
Yeah, so not thinking far enough ahead there.
I think he noticed at the moment the Goblin Guide attacked. There was this pause, like, oh, yeah, I could have. Okay, well, whatever. True name.
Yeah.
You know.
So, yeah, Joey's sitting on 2 cards. Eddie has to assume they both deal him damage in some regard.
Yep, True Name Nemesis cast by Solis. If I'm Solis, I am nervous about this current board state.
I'm sweating it, yeah. You've tapped low, you've exposed yourself to things like Fire Blast, Sulfuric Vortex, Price of Progress.
I mean, he doesn't have any counter magic. He's just making True Name Nemesis.
Yep, has to hope that's good enough.
He has a Swords. I mean, fortunately for him, he hasn't taken too much damage yet, and it's another mountain from Joey Lively. He's drawn 3 mountains in a row.
Yeah, and this is the risk when you play a deck like Burn.
Yeah, your top risk can be real bad.
Yeah, you have to resolve X spells. Sometimes you don't draw X spells.
Now, here's a play from Solis that I want to talk to you about. He taps out for Stoneforge Mystic. How do you feel about tapping the white mana here?
I like it. He's actually, you notice that he left up both of his Wastelands. He did that for a reason. So he's playing around Price of Progress.
Yeah. What I mean is that he could be holding up swords to swords his own True Names.
Okay, sure. That would put him from 7 to 8. Or
it's 7 to 10.
Power, yeah. Okay.
7 to 10.
7 to 10. Yeah, that's worth a card. So that's reasonable. I think maybe the reason he is opting not to do this is he has to assume that Joey is holding on to something that deals a colossal amount of damage. Like, if he's sitting on a card, it is probably something like Price of Progress.
I'd say like Fire Blast, Price of Progress. So 3 puts Solis down to 4.
I guess if you can put him on Fire Blast.
And it's Fire Blast.
Which makes sense. Yeah, now that I think about it.
So if he'd held up the white.
Yeah, wow, okay. Yeah, again, it has to be like one of the, it wouldn't just be like a bolt because he just would have played it. So it has to be either, something he has to hold for the right time, and Fire Blast is definitely one of those cards.
All right, so Joey Lively takes game 2, and we're going on
Eddie
to 3.
Is not pleased with himself.
Yeah, well, that's not to say that there's not a reason to play the Stoneforge. So he didn't actually have land 5 for Batterskull. What playing Stoneforge does is it forces Lively to win that turn because he can hook up a GT next turn to a True Name. Though to be fair, I think he's already got Joey on that 2-turn clock thanks to the True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, Joey was at 9, so the True Names were winning the game on the next turn on their own. Well,
2 turns.
So
the same does amount of time take 1 turn. No, it takes 1 turn off the clock because next turn he could play GT, equip a True Name Swing, and then gain 4, which probably closes out the game.
Okay, that's fair. So he's basically denying Joey 1 draw step, but tapping low in 1 turn. Where if he puts Joey on Fire Blast, which as we said is a pretty reasonable thing to put him on.
Right.
If you know the 1 live card is Fire Blast, then you're at virtual 3, and literally every card in Joey's deck does 3. So.
Right.
Yeah, that he does kind of take 1 risk. He closes off 1 sort of danger, but takes a risk exposing himself to another. Basically says, yeah, I would rather you have 1 look at a card that does 3 than 2 looks at a card that does 6 or does 7, I guess.
Yeah, it's like
And
it's hard to get 2 cards that deal 7 without getting 1 card that deals 3.
Yeah, that's true. And when I phrase it that way, I think I definitely. Yeah, I would have preferred to leave white up. But again,
it's not a play you see right away.
Yeah, if you can confidently put Joey on Fire Blast. And I think Eddie, this is kind of that post game. Well, of course he had it. I knew he had it.
Fire Blast. Yeah, and I mean, that's
an easy thing.
So here's the thing, is that Joey was playing a land every turn. So what are the cards in his hand? Like more lands and Fire Blast. I think that's about it. But there was a turn on turn 2 where Joey missed a land drop. So his hand can't actually be all lands.
Right, yeah, it has to be spells, for sure.
It has to be spells, because he's just top decking lands.
And there is a pretty lengthy list of spells that are in Joey's deck that we're pretty sure he would just cast if he drew.
Well, so the cards that could be remaining in his hand, I suppose, would be like a Young Pyromancer, which Solis doesn't know about yet. And the Fire Blast, and maybe if you had more surgical extractions in.
Sure. Yeah. Once you see surgical extraction, it's
I'm
like,
assuming there's multiple of them.
Yeah, like that. I guess that kind of that muddies the waters. We don't really know what could come out of his hand at this point.
Right.
So maybe there's that. He could be stuck on like something that he's not being given a target for. He actually could have had something like Searing Blaze in his hand or Searing Blood, because the only creatures that he had, the only creatures in play were True Name Nemesis that they couldn't be targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we actually, looking at his list, we know that he does not have any of those cards. He has 0 Searing Blood, 0 Searing Blaze. Eddie doesn't know that.
Our last burn player we had on camera, though, was playing the set of Searing Bloods. So that's a card, you know, I mean, it's a great answer to Stoneforge Mystic, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, again, if you're trying to like put your opponent on a certain card, you can kind of look back over the last couple turns, like, these are the things we can rule out. These are the things that would make sense given what he's done. And actually, Searing Blaze and Searing Blood would have made sense as a card to play around. But if that's the card you're playing around, you can't play Stoneforge Mystic.
All right, so we're underway for Game 3. Solis with a Delver of Secrets on the play. And for the third game in a row, Lively has a turn 1 Goblin Guide.
Oh, him and Goblin Guide, they get along.
And it's going to go ahead and get forced, removing Brainstorm from Solis. So no interest in getting beaten down for 6 by that 1-drop again. Now, question for you. If you're Lively and you have a burn spell, do you have to point it at that Delver as much as you don't want to point bolts at the creatures?
Yeah, you'd really prefer not to. It kind of depends on how the game progresses. Joey tries to get the Goblin Guide out first. If he can stick a more like a recurring source of damage, then bolts become more valuable pointed at Eddie's head. But if it looks like he's not getting any traction that way, he does have to stabilize somehow.
So upkeep, Solis is going to Brainstorm. He found the 5 cards he saw were Ponder, Land, second Delver. So he had to make a decision. He could either flip this Delver this turn and then play another Delver off the Ponder, or he could play both Delvers and flip them both next turn. He decided to go for the play where he flips 1 Delver immediately.
Yeah, and actually, as we're saying, like, once he gets a 3-2 in play on turn 2 attacking, that puts Joey in a position where he has to start trading cards for Eddie's creatures on board rather than throwing them at his head, which buys Eddie a ton of time.
Right. So Eddie plays the Ponder that he revealed that turn for the Delver. Saw some more fetch lands and a Force of Will, so nothing good. He's going to shuffle and draw off the top. Remember, Solis right now in the lead, but the only card in his hand left is just some lands and a Delver.
Yeah. It's interesting that he played the Ponder that turn.
You'd rather play it with like a fetch land up or something?
Well, I'd rather get the Delver in play first. And
sure.
So you can clear one of the lands off the top so that the Ponder is more likely to set up the Delver of Secrets.
All right, well, out of the sideboard, it's a 1 of Red Elemental Blast. That's going to go ahead and take care of Insectile Aberration. And Lively actually clears the board here. He suspends the Rift Bolt.
Yeah, that Lively in this case actually gets to use, again, one of his cards that does not deal damage. So he doesn't have to sacrifice one of the spells he has to resolve to win the game.
Yeah, now it looks like Lively has brought in most of his sideboard here. His draw for that turn was Pyrostatic Pillar, so that was actually boarded in as well.
Interesting. All right, that triggers on, I want to say, every single spell in Eddie's deck except for the Batterskull.
So you like it in the matchup then?
I didn't say that.
Naturally, yeah, it's like
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's the kind of thing that if you can stick it on an empty board, it's very powerful.
On turn 2 on an empty board, I think it has to do 4 damage to be worth it, right? It has to reach flame rift level of burn before it's good. So it has to get to, they have to trigger it twice, and they get to choose when they trigger it.
Yeah. Well, you can look at it that way. You can also look at it as a way of saying, like, well, assuming that I am dealing damage in other ways, which he's actually not right now, except for this one Rift Bolt. But if you can get Eddie to a reasonably low life total, say like 12, 10, something like that, then you take away all of Eddie's options when you cast it.
Right. He's going to go ahead. He had the option between Young Pyromancer and Pyrostatic Pillar. He went with Pyrostatic Pillar here. Remember, Solis had the Delver of Secrets in his hand and opted not to cast it that turn. He left his mana open for, well, we will find out what for.
A daze, I guess. That didn't work out for him.
Wait, why I don't understand that.
Yeah, leaving up Daze and Wasteland, I suppose. Are we okay?
Yeah, that is
definitely a Delver. So
okay,
yeah, that is odd. And yeah, now that this Pyrostatic Pillar is in play, Eddie does not have a way to get it off the board. So Eddie basically he has 7 spells left.
Yep.
Joey has 9 spells left, and it's just the same. But that's
Joey
right. That's right where Joey wants to be.
Yeah, Joey can take some damage. That is a Delver on the board. We'll be getting the card overlay on it in a second. And now it's all the enchantment burn for Joey Lively.
Okay.
Pyrostatic Pillar joined by Sulfuric Vortex.
Yeah. So that I like this actually. Like we said that Joey needed to resolve so many spells, but Joey has kind of transitioned to a deck that can stick resilient, permanent sources of damage. Normally, what we see there is creatures. Those are that's the go-to recurring source of damage that most decks play in Magic. Joey knows those aren't going to stick against the Blue-Red Delver deck,
right.
So he's boarded in permanent sources of damage that Eddie cannot easily get rid of, or can't get rid of at all.
Now, the one thing I want to point out here is that all these sources of damage are reciprocal. The life totals are 12-12, and actually Solis is the one with a creature in play. Like, can this what do you think are the chances of this backfiring? The burn player burns himself out.
Oh, it definitely can. He's taking two just
two
to
more
cast
to cast a second vortex. This is all reciprocal damage. I'm slightly worried for Joey here.
Yeah, you gotta live on the edge of your seat here a little to make this plan work. He maybe when he's going for this board plan, he's thinking, well, I have several burn spells in my deck that can be used to control Eddie's creatures. So he's kind of saying that, like, well, I was the beatdown, now I'm the control.
But now that Delver flips, so Eddie Solis goes to 8 on his upkeep, but then the Delver flips off Ponder. He's going to put Lively down to 7, and then down to 3. Lively has one more spell this game.
Mm-hmm. But if it's...
Unless it's Fire Blast.
Yeah, it has, okay.
Fire Blast is sweet here.
Fire Blast will not trigger the Pyrostatic Pillar, and is that it? Is that actually, that may be his only out, because Eddie is going to go to 4.
Flame Rift.
Okay, yeah, Flame Rift do it, yeah. Joey needs to cast 1 spell, and that spell has to deal 4 damage.
Fire Blast or Flame Rift. That is it.
Would Price of Progress do it? Actually, I think it would as well.
Price of Progress would also do it.
Okay. Is there anything else?
We got to look at the sideboard. You know he's boarded in a lot of cards here.
He has. None of these...
Nothing else out of the board.
None of these... He has 3 Ashen Rider in his sideboard. That's a spicy
Unless
one,
somehow Eddie Solis made him discard a Guerrilla Tactics. That would do it too.
All right, yeah. We've seen him boarded in several cards that we did not expect him to board in. If he boarded in Guerrilla Tactics, I don't know.
As long as he didn't board in the Ashen Rider, I'm fine.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yes. If Joey Lively casts Ashen Rider, he has leveled us. I'll tell you that much. And Eddie's in the tank, it looks like.
All right, so he goes down to 7, now down to 3 during his upkeep, thanks to these 2 Sulfuric Vortexes that someone put on the battlefield.
Checks and...
Fire Blast or Flame Rift. It's going to float.
Oh, cost 2, that's big.
I think, well, he might just be floating double red.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, so Joey now has to consider, how can I be punished for this? Again, any spell that Eddie casts...
Force of Will would do it.
Force of Will would do it, yeah. Force of Will is not... even when you cast it for free, it does not trigger Pyrostatic Pillar, but you wouldn't even need to cast it for free. You can actually pay 5 mana. That's because he does have the Fire Blast.
Sacks the 2 mountains, it's Fire Blast. Does he have the hard cast Force of Will? And he does not.
Extends
Joey
the hand.
Lively takes it 2 games to 1 over Eddie Solis, moves to 7-0, and punches a spot in the top 8.
Wow. All right. So, we did not expect that that enchantment plan. We didn't expect it, period. But it actually looked pretty good there.
It's interesting. So one of the things I always am worried about with Burn is I last time see Burn players in Legacy over sideboarding. Like, the deck is so linear in its approach. Like, you have these hateful cards in your sideboard, right? Pyrostatic Pillars, Surgical Extractions. They're good against specific strategies, but the more, like, you're still in the philosophy where you want every card to deal 3, and as you board in too many cards, like, you can get away from that.
Right. And again, as we saw, he basically made a transition to a game plan where he didn't need for all of his spells to deal damage, because he had some spells that were going to deal 8, 12, 10, however many, like, you don't need for every spell you cast to deal 3 when you can just play Sulfuric Vortex.
Well, as it turns out, the Vortexes were awesome. The Pyrostatic Pillar did 2 to Solis and 4 to Lively. So I'm not sure that the Pyrostatic Pillar plan worked out so well that game, but the Vortexes, A+.
Yeah, that's true. And Sulfuric Vortex, that's a card that burn players, whether it be actual red burn, blue-red, people have been going to Sulfuric Vortex as a trump against Stoneforge Mystic for a long time now.
Yeah, card's very, very good here. So about 18 minutes left in the